Okay, so like what?
Well, we could eliminate all voter registration laws. See, when Democrats get in charge, we try to protect voting rights. We don't make voting easier. Now, I'm all for voter eligibility requirements. We might disagree about what those requirements should be, but, I'm going to say that, there should be an age limit to vote. I might say 16, you might say 18, but I'm not going to say 8. Right? Mm-hmm. So we're going to agree that there should be voter eligibility requirements. But once you're eligible, why do you have to pre-register? Why is that even a thing? It wasn't a thing in this country at the founding. We didn't have voter pre-registration in 1787. We didn't have voter pre-registration in 1821. We only started having voter registration, generally speaking, after the Civil War. Why do you think that is? It's because a bunch of freed African slaves were migrating up north, and all of a sudden New York was like, we need some registration up in here, right? A bunch of immigrants from Europe, mainly Ireland and Italy, were coming to New York. People were like, oh, we need some registration in here. If you're eligible to vote, you should be automatically registered to vote, and that is how they do it everywhere else but us. Everywhere else but us either has automatic registration or some other form of forced registration for everybody, so that you don't have this disconnect between eligible voters and registered voters. That's the first law in the book that we could change. And it's to see how that's different than just saying we have to protect voting rights. No. We don't have to protect voting rights. We have to expand voting rights so that the 90 million people that sat on the couch and sat out this last election between democracy and fascism, so that maybe they have a little bit of an easier time to get up off the couch and come participate in the democracy.
All right, guys, so we got to talk about Trump deranged lunatic and frequent MSNBC contributor Elie Mystal, who is making headlines because he is basically declaring that all laws before 1965 should be deemed unconstitutional because those laws were, quote, written by white men, and therefore they are racist by definition. This guy is also demanding that Democrats get rid of all voter registration laws as well, too, because they're racist, right? Registering to vote, having to register to vote is racist. Apparently, this guy doesn't feel like so-called minorities, black people, are smart enough to register to vote, right? So therefore, they need the government to just automatically register them so that they can vote. And again, this is a part of the Democrats and their plan to try to save themselves, okay? He has a book called Project 2029, okay? And again, the reason why he's calling it that is because, like I tell you guys, the Democrats have until 2030 to get it together. And as I've told you guys before in the past, the main plan from the Democrats in order to get it together to save themselves because of the fact that people are leaving blue states and going to red states, which means that Republicans are going to hold a lot more power, is the Democrats need to basically make it as easy as possible to vote, right? This is why Democrats want a so-called pathway to citizenship for illegal immigrants. They're trying to allow illegals to vote. They want to essentially make it as easy as possible for anybody in this country to vote. And their theory is that if more idiots vote, then it's going to be more likely that Democrats are going to win, right? That is what the theory is. So again, this guy is basically pushing this proposal, and I want to react to it because stuff like this, we may laugh at it, right? We kiki and ha-ha, but we should take it serious because the lunatics are taking over the Democrat Party. The Democrat Party will be taken over by progressive lunatics like Elie Mystal, and that means that they probably will try something like this, right? That this is something that may actually be on their radar. Right? So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this.
Welcome back. Battles over immigration and voting rights laws are some of the hottest topics in America right now. And today, best-selling author and justice correspondent for The Nation, Elie Mystal, is telling us why they all made the list in his new book, Bad Law, 10 popular laws that are ruining America. Welcome back, Elie Mystal. So, given there's so much to pick from, what?
Yeah.
What was it about these 10 that solidified it for you?
Yeah, so I set out to start to kind of try to write Project 2029, right? When Republicans come into office, they come in with a sledgehammer, right? They come in smashing things that I hold dear. When Democrats come into office, they come in with like super glue and tape. And so they try to put things back together. So I thought about writing 10 constitutional amendments that'd be super cool if we had. I was like, no. We need to smash the things that they like. We need to smash the things that are holding this country back. And so I came up with 10 laws that we could just be rid of. Not reform, not update for the modern era. 10 things that we can smash if we ever are allowed to get power again that would make this country better tomorrow.
See? Now, I love this book. You are dead on, and it is a fantastic book. One of the laws you write about is playing out right now, the Immigration and Nationality Act. Now, this administration is using this statute to justify the detentions and possible deportations, actually, of visa and green card holders who they seem to deem a threat to U.S. foreign policy. What do you make of the administration's use of the act? And more broadly, is Trump really setting up a First Amendment showdown, which is what Whoopi's been talking about?
Yes, absolutely. One of my premises for the book is that every law passed before the 1965 Voting Rights Act should be presumptively unconstitutional. Right? But because before the 1965 Voting Rights Act, we were functionally an apartheid country. Not everybody who lived here could vote here. So why should I give about some law that some old white man passed in the 1920s, like the Immigration and Nationality Act? When they passed our fundamental immigration law, Congress said in real time that they needed the law to prevent the, quote, mongrelization of the white race by the inferior races. Now I look at that law and I say, I don't think that's so good. I don't think we should still be using it, but we are still using it today. That is the authority that Trump is using to criminalize people and to pull people's visa cards. Marco Rubio, that comes from the 1956 update to the 1921 Act. Now, I personally do not think that I can convince people to open their hearts and minds to immigration. I understand that in our failing country, treating people with respect and decency and humanity is a controversial position. And
Wow. Wow. Guys, you see how radical this guy is? This is the Democrat Party, guys. That's why I want people to understand. As radical as this sounds, this is going to be standard rhetoric in the Democrat Party in the next 5 years. I guarantee you, especially towards the end of President Trump's second term, right? This guy is basically saying that every law before 1965 is unconstitutional. Why? Well, because it was written by white men, right? According to him, okay? Because we were in an apartheid state. And this dude is saying, yeah, they should all be unconstitutional, right? Because I don't like when it was enacted, right? So therefore, we should just get rid of it. That also includes every Civil Rights Act, the right for women to vote, the Social Security Act, which, by the way, leftists are currently committing acts of violence over, okay? But this guy, Elie Mystal, probably is too dumb to realize that he advocated to get rid of Social Security because evidently it's racist, right? Because FDR, a white man, signed that into law, right? I'm just saying. I hope he doesn't have a Tesla, right? I hope that he does not have a Tesla coming up here on national television and advocating to get rid of Social Security, okay? But again, there's other things as well too, like slavery, which I'm pretty sure he wouldn't like being a slave, right? Considering how he's black, but this guy, I don't think he's fit enough to be a slave, to be honest with you. He would be a very bad slave. So, I'm just saying, I don't know exactly if this guy has really thought through this stuff, but the whole point is to say a bunch of deranged things to sell books, right? That's the whole point. But best believe it is characters like this that are encouraging the Democrats to do things like, for example, wanting to pack the Supreme Court. This guy was raging for Democrats to repeal the filibuster, to pack the courts, to essentially overthrow the government, right? This is what he was demanding. And a lot of people in the party wanted to do just that. That is what the progressives were calling for. So again, I'm just saying, guys like this, I feel like he's the type of dude that will give AOC her talking points, right? That would give Jasmine Crockett her talking points and tell them, hey, come out and support this, right? All of these things, right? And again, that is why, I take what he says seriously in the sense that if Democrats ever got power and control again, I would not be surprised if they actually tried to do these very radical things that this guy is calling for.
cannot change their minds. But we can dang sure make sure that we're not putting people in jail for the crime of existing.
Right.
That we're not putting people in jail for the crime of not filling out the form in triplicate in the right time and submitting it to the right agent. Criminal immigration status offenses should not be criminal offenses. They should be civil offenses. We shouldn't be ripping people away from their families because they didn't fill out the paperwork correctly.
Right.
Wow. Again, listen to this lunatic, right? This guy is basically saying that, hey, illegal immigration shouldn't be illegal, right? It shouldn't be illegal to come into this country. Anybody should be able to just come into the country, and it's fine, right? We shouldn't be able to deport people. We shouldn't be able to get rid of gang members and criminals and thugs, right? Let's support a system of human trafficking, right? Let's support a system of drug trafficking that is killing thousands, tens of thousands of Americans per year. Yeah, let's continue to support that, right? That is what this guy's advocating for. But again, this is the radical extremism of the Democrat Party. They do not believe in borders. They don't believe in borders. They don't believe in laws before 1965, right? He just told you. They don't believe in any type of law and order whatsoever. They want chaos and destruction. That is what this man is advocating for.
Alyssa, you got it.
Yeah, Elie, so I, congrats on the book, and I weirdly read the epilogue first, and what I was struck by, what you and I agreed on, well, we may disagree on some of the issues in the law, you did lay out a bunch of solutions. One of them is adding more seats to the House of Representatives, but you acknowledge those are really hard things to do. That's not something that I think either of us expect is going to happen in the next decade. So what do you see as sort of the marginal changes that are actually really tangible and realistic that could be put in place in the next few years?
I argue that we should eliminate all voter registration laws. Now, that might not sound realistic to you, but I promise you that it is, because we already have voter eligibility requirements, right? An eligibility requirement would be like an age limit, right? 18 to vote, I might say you should be 16, but I'm not going to say 8. I've got an 8-year-old who does knock, but I've got an 8-year-old, right? We don't want them.
I don't know. If Democrats believe they can get 8-year-olds to vote Democrat, then they probably would support 8-year-olds voting, right? But that's why they want 16-year-olds to vote, because they believe that 16-year-olds are going to vote Democrat. If they didn't believe that 16-year-olds would vote Democrat, then they wouldn't be arguing for 16-year-olds to vote, right? But yeah, we shouldn't be thinking about lowering the minimum age requirement to vote. We should actually be thinking about raising it, right? If anything, we're going to do anything with the minimum age to vote, we should be raising it. That's what we should be doing.
And voting. But once you meet the eligibility requirement, why can't you automatically be registered to vote?
That's right.
Having the second step of voter registration needlessly suppresses the votes for no real benefit. Some people might say, like, oh, it prevents voter fraud. First of all, no, it doesn't. Second of all, voter fraud doesn't exist. Right? If I say I want to go fishing somewhere, and you say, you can't go fishing there. I say, why? Because the Loch Ness Monster might get you. Like that. That's shut up. That's not a good reason to have a law, right? Let's get rid of that, right? So
yeah, and just because you believe voter fraud doesn't exist doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. It actually does exist. Also, on top of that, the reason why you have people registered to vote is because you don't want to just be allowing everybody to vote via automatic registration, right? That is going to make it a lot harder to vet the people who are voting, to make sure that the person that is voting is actually who they say they are, okay, and that they have the ability, they meet the actual requirements to vote. And having to register to vote actually helps when it comes to weeding out people who are trying to vote who should not be voting, right? But again, that's the whole point. The whole point that these people are trying to do is that they're trying to make it as easy as possible to vote. They're trying to make the system as easy as possible to game, because if they can do that, then it makes it easier for Democrats to try to get illegals to vote, right? To get people who are not supposed to be voting to vote, right? That is the whole point. They want to basically tear down any type of election integrity, any type of election security measures to try to get as many people as possible to vote, because they believe that the more people that vote, the more likely it is that Democrats are going to win. Okay, that's what they believe. And in my opinion, I personally think that registering to vote is basically like an IQ test, right? If you are not capable of registering to vote, which is super easy to do, okay? I mean, anybody can do it. You can do it online, right? Like, if you can't register to vote, then you don't need to vote, right? And see, this is why I fundamentally disagree with leftists. I personally do not think that everybody should vote. I personally take the Socrates approach when it comes to democracy, as he outlined in Plato's Dialogues, that voting should be for the educated and the virtuous, right? An uninformed and uneducated populace, mass voting leads to bad decisions, right? It leads to tyranny, okay? That's what it leads to. And that's not what we want, right? But that's what Democrats want, right? That's what they want, okay? And again, Democrats, they particularly benefit from this because Democrats promise all types of handouts, right? Oh, the government's going to do everything for you, okay? And again, people easily sign up for things that are not really good for the country due to a lot of these promises that Democrats tend to make, right? And again, that's part of the reason why I am against this, right? I don't think that we should be forcing people to register to vote. Voting should be an active thing that people do. It's a civic duty. And if you don't participate in it, fine, right? But I don't think you should be forced to do so. But that is ultimately what Democrats want to do. They want to force people to vote, okay, even though they don't want to vote because they know that the uninformed are more likely to vote for Democrats, right? Again, despite the smear they put out there about Republican voters being uneducated. That's what they put out there. But again, that's just projection, like Democrats always do. The reality is that their base of supporters are the ones that are actually most uneducated. It's just a lot of them don't vote, right? So they're trying to get the uneducated to vote, right? That's what they're trying to do. Because again, if you're an educated person, then you don't need all this, right? You don't need somebody to automatically register you to vote. Why would you even want that, right? If your base of voters, okay, are educated, right, and they're responsible citizens, why do they need this? They don't. Which tells you the whole point of why he's advocating for this. Because he wants people who should be voting to vote, right? That's what he wants.
That if we open up the aperture to voting to more people, to get some of those 90 million people who stayed home on the couch, to get them to have easier access to the ballot, I think some of these larger changes that I talk in the book.
But they don't want that on that side. They don't want that.
It's funny. You know what they do want, though?
Yeah.
They want voter ID.
Yeah,
They're all hot for voter ID as the thing that is going to like secure the election. So I say, if voter ID is so important to you, if you think that that's what it takes to secure an election, let's make a trade.
Can I ask one follow-up?
You get
Good luck.
you get voter ID, and I get mandatory automatic registration. Who says no? And I promise you, it's the Republicans that say no because they don't want more people voting.
That's
It's
right.
not about security. They don't want more people voting.
No, I don't want more people voting. You're right. You caught me. You caught me. Oh my God. You caught me, right? No, I don't. Because that's silly, right? That's a silly thing. I want people to vote who, one, want to vote, two, are educated and responsible enough to vote, right? That's what I want. But again, Democrats think it's a good idea that everybody should vote. No, everybody should not vote. Again, this is where we fundamentally disagree, right? When it comes to the philosophy behind democracy, right? I personally think that democracy is a thing that you have to be very, very, very careful with, right? It has to be done in a way in which you can kind of filter it out. That's why our Constitution, our government is set up the way that it is. That's why it is a republic, right? That's why we're a republic, okay? It's because democracy, unfiltered democracy, again, it's not good for the country, okay? That's mob rule, and that's not what anybody wants, right? But again, I think it's actually more controversial to want everybody to vote, right? To compel people to vote who, again, don't want to vote, right? And who aren't educated or responsible enough to vote. To compel them to vote, I think is a much more reckless position to take, much more controversial than somebody saying, no, we actually need to have filters on who can vote and to make sure that, again, the people who are voting are responsible enough to vote and that they actually want to vote, okay, and that they're taking their civic duty seriously, right? I mean, I think that is a less controversial position. But again, according to these people, that's racist, right? That's racist.
Oh, I was just going to say, so some countries automatically at a certain age register you to vote. Would you be in support of just universal, you turn 18 and are registered?
Not just some countries. Most countries that are not us either have automatic registration, mandatory registration, where you pay a fine if you're not registered, or same-day registration. Pick one. There are lots of democracies out there. Pick one. We do it the dumbest way.
Yeah, but I guarantee you a lot of these countries that he's talking about, that he loves so much, I guarantee you they do paper ballots, hand-counted, single-day voting, right? Which I guarantee you this dude does not support. I guarantee you he won't support that, right? He wouldn't support that. So, you know, it's just funny to me because these leftists are once again demonstrating just how deranged they are, right? Like, this guy cares so much about illegal immigrants, including the gang members. Well, the reason why is because ultimately, at the end of the day, they want those people to be able to vote. And they know those people likely would vote Democrat, and it would lead to more power and control. This is why all of the policies that they're so passionate about just equal more power and control for Democrats, right? It's not about actually helping anybody, especially American citizen. No, they don't care about you at all, right? In fact, they have contempt for you, particularly if you are a straight white male. But again, everything they care about is just power and control. And this is why we cannot allow Democrats to regain power. Guys like this are a reminder of what Democrats will try to do, especially, again, after this term from President Trump. If they ever take back power, the gloves are off, right? This is the type of stuff that they're going to be trying to do, okay? Because they are going to try to make sure that Republicans can never win elections again. And they've already laid out a roadmap in order to do it, right? What they want to do, okay? This guy is calling for a Project 2029 for Democrats, right? That's what he's calling for. And this is why we cannot be complacent. We must continue to get out and vote. We must continue to stand up against his radical agenda. And it's very easy to forget about it. But if Democrats take back power and control, this is the type of stuff that they're going to be doing, which is why we can't let that happen. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.